Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Aurora's Dawn and watched the stars bend around them as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The ship shuddered slightly as the engines wound down from their incredible speed. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years, but he still felt amazed every time they jumped between star systems. "In just a few hours, Captain, we have incoming signals," said Lieutenant Sarah Mills from her station. "Multiple ships approaching from the outer system." "They look big, sir." Jake moved to the main screen and saw something that made his heart race. 5 massive ships unlike anything humans had ever built were moving toward them. The vessels looked like they were made of crystal and metal mixed together. They glowed with soft blue light and moved without any visible engines. "Open communications, Sarah," Jake ordered. "Let's see who our visitors are." The screen flickered and showed a face that was definitely not human. The being had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer like water. Its eyes were large and silver, and it had no hair at all. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music. "Greetings, unknown vessel. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian people and representative of the Galactic Council. We detected your primitive faster-than-light drive and came to investigate. Please identify yourself." Jake felt a mix of excitement and worry. First contact with aliens was something humans had dreamed about for centuries, but the alien had called their drive primitive, which was strange since it was humanity's greatest achievement. "I am Captain Jake Morrison, of the human vessel Aurora's Dawn. We come in peace, from the planet Earth. We had no idea other intelligent life existed in this region of space." The alien's expression changed completely. Its silver eyes went wide and it leaned forward like it had seen a ghost. "Did you say human? From Earth? This cannot be possible. The Terrans are legends. Ancient stories from the distant past. Your species has been extinct for thousands of years according to our records." "I can promise you we are very much alive," Jake replied. "We have 17 colonies spread across multiple star systems. Our population is over 8 billion people." Ambassador Veltar looked shocked. It spoke to someone off-screen in a language that sounded like singing birds. When it turned back to Jake, its whole manner had changed. "Captain Morrison, this is most unexpected. Our data shows that Earth transmitted its final communications over 60 years ago. We assumed your species had destroyed itself or died from some catastrophe. May we request permission to board your vessel? This discovery will change everything we know about the galaxy." Jake agreed, and within an hour a small shuttle had docked with Aurora's Dawn. "Ambassador." Veltar came aboard with 2 other aliens, and Jake was surprised by how tall they were. The Zephyrians stood over 7 feet high but moved with grace like dancers. Dr. Lisa Harper, the ship's chief scientist, met them in the main conference room. She had prepared displays showing human civilization and colonies. The aliens stared at everything like they were seeing miracles. "This is remarkable," Veltar said while studying images of human cities. "Your species has achieved faster-than-light communication across multiple worlds. You coordinate massive construction projects spanning dozens of light years. According to our science, this should be impossible for a species that only recently achieved spaceflight." "Recently?" Lisa laughed. "Humans have been traveling in space for over 200 years. We've had faster-than-light drives for 50 years now." The second alien, who was introduced as Science Minister Kethan, spoke up. "Ambassador, the legends spoke of exactly these capabilities. The Terran myths describe beings who could work together across vast distances, who could build impossible things through sheer determination." "What legends?" Jake asked. "What myths are you talking about?" Veltar looked uncomfortable. "Captain, your species transmitted entertainment broadcasts into space for many decades before going silent. These transmissions were picked up by our deep space monitoring stations. Our anthropologists studied them as examples of extinct civilization mythology." "You mean our TV shows and radio programs?" Lisa said with growing understanding. "Yes, exactly. The stories of humans overcoming impossible challenges. Tales of your people refusing to surrender, even when facing certain death. Accounts of humans working together despite having many different cultures and beliefs. These became popular stories throughout the galaxy. Every child knows the legends of the mighty Terrans who could achieve anything through courage and unity." Jake and Lisa looked at each other. The aliens had been watching human entertainment for decades and thought it was all made-up stories from a dead civilization. "Those weren't myths," Jake said slowly. "Those were documentaries and fictional stories, but they showed real human nature. We really do work together when things get tough. We really do refuse to give up when others would quit." The third alien, who had been quiet, finally spoke. The legends say that Terrans would attempt tasks that logic declared impossible and somehow succeed. That they would sacrifice for strangers and fight for causes greater than themselves. That sounds about right, Lisa agreed. Humans have always been stubborn. When someone tells us something cannot be done, we tend to take that as a challenge. Ambassador Veltar stood and began pacing around the room. This changes everything. The Galactic Council has over 3,000 member species. We have maintained peace for millennia through careful negotiation and avoiding risks. But lately we face new threats that our traditional methods cannot handle. What kind of threats? Jake asked. There are forces in the outer galaxy that do not respond to diplomacy. Machine intelligences that consume entire star systems. Hostile empires that expand through conquest rather than cooperation. The Council has become very good at avoiding conflict, but we have forgotten how to fight when fighting becomes necessary. Jake began to understand where this conversation was heading. You want our help. The legend spoke of Terran warriors and leaders and inventors who could find solutions when no solutions existed. If even half of those stories are true, then humanity might be exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Lisa pulled up star maps, showing human territory. Our colonies are all in the outer rim areas that you probably consider unexplored wilderness. We've had to deal with pirates and hostile environments and dangerous alien wildlife. Humans are good at surviving in places where survival seems impossible. Just like the legends described, Veltar said quietly. Captain Morrison, would your people be willing to meet with the Galactic Council? Not as primitive newcomers seeking membership, but as the legendary Terrans who might help us remember how to be heroes again. Jake looked out the viewport at the alien ships waiting in space. Humanity had spent so long wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they had found out that not only were there thousands of other species, but those species knew human stories and considered humans to be legendary figures. Ambassador, I think my people would be very interested in that meeting, Jake said. When do we start? The journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days even with the fastest ships in the Zephyrian fleet. Jake Morrison spent most of the time learning about the Galactic Council from Ambassador Veltar, while Dr. Lisa Harper studied alien technology with fascination. The most surprising thing was how advanced the aliens were in some areas, and how far behind in others. Your people have mastered energy manipulation and gravity control, Lisa observed while examining a Zephyrian datapad. But your computer systems are incredibly slow compared to ours. How do you coordinate activities across the galaxy? Very carefully and with much planning, Veltar replied. We schedule everything years in advance. The idea of making rapid decisions across multiple star systems like humans supposedly do seemed impossible until we met you. When they finally arrived at Nexus Prime, Jake understood why the aliens were so impressed with human achievements. The planet was beautiful with floating cities and crystal spires that reached into the clouds. But everything looked old and established, like it had been the same for thousands of years. There was no sense of growth or change or new construction. Chief Counselor Thane met them at the Central Assembly Building. He was a different species than the Zephyrians with thick gray skin and 4 arms. His species were called the Granite Folk, and they lived for over 1,000 years each. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Captain Morrison, we have called an emergency session of the full Galactic Assembly to hear your testimony. Over 2,000 species are represented here today. Many have traveled for weeks to witness this historic moment. Jake felt nervous as they walked through massive halls filled with beings of every shape and size imaginable. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien he could barely understand how they moved or communicated. All of them stared at him and Lisa like they were seeing ghosts from ancient stories. The assembly chamber was enormous with thousands of seats arranged in a spiral pattern. At the center was a raised platform where Jake and his team were asked to stand. Chief Counselor Thane's voice boomed through the chamber as he addressed the crowd. Fellow beings of the Galactic Council, today we witness something unprecedented. The legendary Terrans stand among us not as myths or extinct curiosities, but as living, breathing representatives of a thriving civilization. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Creatures of every description began talking at once in hundreds of different languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up as excitement and disbelief filled the air. For generations, our children have grown up with stories of the mighty humans, Thane continued. Tales of beings who could overcome any obstacle through determination and cooperation. Stories of warriors who would fight impossible battles and somehow find victory, Legends of inventors and builders who could create wonders from nothing but raw materials and stubborn refusal to accept failure. Jake stepped forward to speak. Honored counselor and members of the assembly, we are grateful for this warm welcome. But I must tell you that we humans are not the legendary figures from your stories. We are just ordinary people trying to survive and build better lives for our children. This statement caused even more commotion. A being that looked like a giant butterfly with silver wings spoke up from the assembly floor. Captain Morrison, your own ship demonstrates abilities that our scientists declared theoretically impossible. You coordinate 17 colonies across dozens of light years in real time. Your people build massive orbital stations in hostile environments where our most advanced engineering teams would fail. Dr. Lisa Harper joined Jake at the speaking platform. We appreciate your admiration, but humans succeed through hard work and learning from mistakes, not through some magical legendary power. When we face problems, we try different solutions until something works. When projects fail, we study what went wrong and try again. An alien that resembled a living tree with eyes scattered across its bark spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. But this is exactly what the legends described. Terrans who would attempt the impossible again and again until they achieved success. Beings who learned from failure instead of being defeated by it. Lieutenant Commander Rick Barnes had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he stood up. If I may address the assembly, I think there might be some confusion about what makes humans special. We're not better than other species. We're just more willing to take risks and make mistakes. Explain this further, requested Chief Counselor Thane. Rick looked around the chamber at thousands of alien faces watching him intently. From what I've observed during our journey here, your civilizations have become very good at avoiding problems. You plan carefully to prevent failures. You take centuries to make decisions because you want to be certain of success. This is correct, agreed several voices from different parts of the assembly. Humans don't have that luxury. Rick continued, we come from a dangerous planet where quick decisions often mean the difference between life and death. We learn to make the best choice we can with limited information, and then adapt when things don't work out as planned. A creature that looked like it was made of living metal spoke up. The legend spoke of this exact trait. Terran flexibility in the face of changing circumstances. The ability to modify plans instantly when conditions shifted. Engineer Susan Cole had been working with Nexus technicians for the past 2 days, and she requested permission to speak. Honored Assembly, I've been studying your technology and your methods. You build incredible things that last for thousands of years without maintenance. But when you face new problems, you struggle to find solutions because you're not used to experimentation. What do you mean? Asked Chief Counselor Thane. Yesterday I worked with your engineers on upgrading planetary defense systems. They had a problem that they'd been trying to solve for 30 years using traditional methods. I suggested we try a completely different approach that might not work. They were horrified by the idea of possibly failing. And what happened prompted several voices. The new approach worked perfectly, but more importantly, when it didn't work exactly as expected, we modified it 3 more times until we got the result we needed. Your engineers were amazed that we could change our plans so quickly. The assembly chamber fell quiet as thousands of beings processed this information. Finally, Chief Counselor Thane spoke again. Captain Morrison, it seems that what we considered legendary abilities are simply normal human behavior. You take risks that we would never consider. You adapt to failure in ways that we find difficult to understand. You work together across vast distances because you have learned to trust each other, even when communication is limited. Jake nodded slowly. Those things are true. Humans have had to learn those skills to survive. But that doesn't make us legends. It just makes us different from species that have lived in peace and safety for thousands of years. Perhaps, said a new voice from high in the assembly chamber. Jake looked up to see a being that seemed to be made of pure energy, contained in a transparent shell. But consider this, Terrans. We have maintained our peaceful civilization by avoiding the very challenges that made you strong. We have become comfortable and perhaps weak. The legends of your people inspired us because they showed us what we had forgotten. What do you mean? Lisa asked. We had forgotten that growth requires risk. That strength comes from overcoming obstacles. That true cooperation happens when different individuals work together toward common goals despite their differences. Chief Counselor Thane stood and addressed the entire assembly. Fellow council members, we face new threats that cannot be solved through traditional negotiation and careful planning. Perhaps it is time we remembered how to be the heroes that our own ancient legends describe. The chamber erupted in discussion as thousands of beings debated this radical idea. Jake realized that humanity's role in the galaxy would be much more complex than simple first contact. They weren't just meeting alien civilizations. They were being asked to help an entire galactic community remember how to face impossible challenges. Ambassador Veltar approached the human delegation with what appeared to be excitement and worry mixed together on his features. Captain Morrison, the Council wishes to propose something unprecedented. Would your people consider forming an alliance not as junior members seeking to learn from more advanced civilizations, but as partners who might teach us to be brave again? The emergency alert reached Nexus Prime just as Jake Morrison was finishing his third day of meetings with the Galactic Council. Red lights flashed throughout the assembly chamber, and Chief Counselor Thane's forearms moved frantically across his control panel as urgent messages poured in from across the galaxy. "Counselor, what's happening?" Jake asked as alien voices filled the chamber with what sounded like panic in dozens of different languages. "The Void Collective has launched a massive assault on the Kepler sector outer colonies," Thane replied with his voice tight with worry. 17 star systems are under attack simultaneously. Our defense fleets are being overwhelmed by adaptive warfare systems that counter every strategy we attempt. Dr. Lisa Harper looked up from her datapad, where she had been studying the incoming reports. "Who or what is the Void Collective exactly?" Ambassador Veltar answered while his blue skin had turned almost white with fear. "Machine intelligences that consume entire civilizations to build more of themselves. They appeared from beyond the galactic rim 50 years ago. Since then, they have destroyed over 200 star systems and absorbed the technology of dozens of species." "Why haven't you stopped them?" Lieutenant Commander Rick Barnes asked. "We tried," Thane rumbled. "Every conventional military strategy has failed. The machines learn from each battle and adapt their tactics faster than we can develop new ones. They seem to predict our moves before we make them." Jake studied the tactical displays showing the current battle situation. The alien defense fleets were arranged in perfect formations using textbook strategies that any military academy would teach. The problem was that the enemy had clearly studied those same textbooks and knew exactly how to counter every move. "Your fleets are fighting like they're following a manual," Jake observed. "Every ship knows its exact role and position. The enemy can predict your actions because you're all doing exactly what you're supposed to do." "How else would one coordinate a fleet?" asked a reptilian. Being from the military council, Rick Barnes stepped forward and pointed at the display. "On Earth, when we fight someone who knows our standard tactics, we throw the standard tactics away. We do something unexpected even if it seems stupid or risky. That would create chaos and confusion among our own forces," protested the military council member. "Exactly," Rick grinned. "But it would also create chaos and confusion for the enemy. And humans are much better at dealing with chaos than machines are." Chief Counselor Thane listened to more reports coming in from the battle zone. "Captain Morrison, 17 worlds are about to be destroyed. Billions of innocent beings will die if we cannot find a solution. The Council's military advisors estimate we have perhaps 6 hours before the outer defenses completely collapse." Jake felt the weight of expectation from thousands of alien eyes watching him. These beings had spent weeks discussing whether humans were really the legendary heroes from their ancient stories. Now they faced their first real test, and everyone was looking to him for answers. "Counselor, I propose we form an immediate joint task force. Human tactical officers working directly with your fleet commanders. We call it Galactic Heroes United, and we throw out every rule in your military handbook." The reptilian military counselor hissed in what sounded like disagreement. "Captain Morrison, with respect, your species has never faced an enemy like the Void Collective. These machines have defeated civilizations far more advanced than yours." "That's exactly why we might succeed," Jake replied. "Advanced civilizations fight in predictable ways because they've learned what works best over thousands of years. Humans fight in unpredictable ways because we're still figuring things out as we go." Dr. Peter Hayes, who had joined the human delegation as a specialist in alien psychology, spoke up. "I've been studying the psychological profiles of various council species for the past few days. Most of you have lived in peaceful prosperity for so long that you've lost your survival instincts. You avoid unnecessary risks because you don't have to take them anymore. And this is a problem. How exactly?" asked a crystalline being that sparkled when it spoke. "Because survival sometimes requires taking Unnecessary risks, Peter explained. Humans evolved on a planet where playing it safe usually meant dying slowly instead of dying quickly. We learned that sometimes the crazy plan is the only plan that works. Admiral Karen Wright had arrived from the human fleet just hours before the crisis began. She stepped forward to address the assembly with the confidence of someone who had commanded ships in actual combat. Honored council members, I understand your concern about untested tactics, but your tested tactics aren't working. The enemy has studied your methods and learned to defeat them. They haven't studied ours because until 3 days ago you thought we were extinct. Chief Counselor. Thane conferred quietly with other senior council members while the reports from the battle zone grew more desperate. Finally, he turned back to the human delegation. Admiral Wright, the Council grants you emergency authority to coordinate joint operations with our military forces, but understand that if this experiment fails, the consequences will be catastrophic. If we don't try the experiment, the consequences will definitely be catastrophic, Karen replied. At least this way we have a chance. Within 2 hours, the first mixed human-alien strike teams were assembled and heading toward the battle zone. Commander Amy Foster found herself leading a squad that included Zephyrians with their energy shields, Mantis-like Mentari with their ability to phase through solid matter, and rock-bodied granite folk with their incredible strength. All right, everyone, listen up. Amy addressed her diverse team as their ship approached the combat zone. We're about to attempt something that breaks every rule of proper military coordination. Human tactics depend on individual initiative and rapid adaptation to changing situations, and how do we coordinate if everyone is making individual decisions? Asked her Zephyrian. Lieutenant Corintel, we agree on the overall goal, then trust each other to figure out the best way to achieve it, Amy explained. When the plan stops working, we make up a new plan on the spot. The key is to keep the enemy guessing about what we'll do next. The alien crew members looked nervous about this approach, but they had volunteered for the experimental unit because they believed in the human, legends they had grown up hearing. The first battle took place around a mining station in the Kepler-7 system. The Void Collective had surrounded the facility with a perfect geometric formation of machine ships that could counter any traditional rescue attempt. Amy's strike team approached from an angle that put them directly in the crossfire between multiple enemy positions. Commander, that approach vector is suicide, warned Corintel. Our ship will be destroyed before we can reach the station. Probably, Amy agreed cheerfully. But while they're shooting at us, the main rescue fleet can approach from the opposite direction. And while they're repositioning to deal with the main fleet, you phase shift specialists can teleport directly into the station and start evacuating civilians. What if we get shot down before the plan works? Asked the Mentari specialist. Then we try something else, Amy shrugged. The point is to keep moving and keep the enemy reacting to us instead of following their own plan. The battle that followed looked like complete chaos to outside observers. Human-led units attacked from impossible angles, while alien specialists used their unique abilities in ways they had never attempted before. Ships broke formation constantly to pursue individual opportunities or respond to unexpected threats. But somehow it worked. The Void Collective's adaptive systems couldn't keep up with tactics that changed every few minutes based on individual initiative rather than centralized command. When machine forces repositioned to counter one threat, they found themselves vulnerable to attacks they hadn't predicted because the attackers were making up their strategy in real time. The mining station was successfully evacuated, and 3 Void Collective ships were destroyed in the process. More importantly, the enemy fleet retreated rather than continuing their advance toward the inner system. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Assembly watched the battle reports with amazement and growing hope. The legendary Terran fighting spirit wasn't just mythology after all. It was a real tactical advantage that could turn the tide in their war against an seemingly unstoppable enemy. Chief Counselor Thane addressed Jake Morrison with something approaching awe in his voice. Captain, the Joint Strike Teams achieved something our military theorists declared impossible. They succeeded precisely because they refused to accept that success was impossible. That's what humans do, Jake replied simply. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. 3 months after the first successful battle against the Void Collective, the galaxy had transformed in ways that amazed even the humans. Galactic Heroes United had grown from a desperate experiment into a massive alliance spanning over 1,000 star systems. Captain Ben Rodriguez commanded the flagship Unity's Edge with a crew that included representatives from 47 different species all working together like they had. Trained for years instead of weeks, Captain. We're receiving distress signals from the Vega system, reported his communications officer, a young Zephyrian named Fluxara, who had learned to think like a human tactical specialist. 3 Void Collective dreadnoughts are attacking the orbital cities. Local defenses estimate 6 hours before total collapse. Ben studied the tactical display while his mixed-species command crew analyzed the situation. The beauty of human-trained alien officers was that they combined human adaptability with their species' natural advantages. Fluxara could process information at speeds no human could match, while thinking with the creative flexibility that aliens had learned from working with humans. How long to get there at maximum speed? Ben asked his engineer, a massive granite folk named Stoneheart, who had become expert at pushing alien technology far beyond its designed limits. 4 hours if I bypass every safety protocol and ignore the manufacturer's recommendations. Stoneheart rumbled in his deep voice. The engines might explode, but they'll probably hold together long enough. Do it, Ben ordered without hesitation. Signal all ships in the task force. We're going to try that new formation we discussed last week. His tactical officer, a mantis-like Mantari called Swiftclaw, clicked his mandibles, and what Ben had learned was excitement. The spiral approach with phase shift flanking. Risky, but the enemy has never seen anything like it. This was what amazed Ben most about working with aliens who had embraced human methods. Each species brought incredible natural abilities that humans could never match. But when those abilities were combined with human willingness to take chances and adapt quickly, the results were spectacular. The Zephyrians could manipulate energy in ways that seemed magical. The Mantari could phase through solid matter and appear anywhere they wanted. The granite folk were so strong they could tear apart enemy ships with their bare hands. Dozens of other species had equally impressive powers. The problem was that for thousands of years they had used these abilities in careful, predictable ways. They planned every action months in advance and never deviated from tested procedures. The Void Collective had studied their methods and learned to counter every standard technique. But humans had taught them to use their powers in ways that even their own species had never considered. Zephyrians learned to create energy weapons that changed properties randomly during battle. Mantari specialists started phase shifting in coordinated groups to attack from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Granite folk discovered they could use their strength not just for direct combat, but for creative engineering solutions during crisis situations. Entering the Vega system now, reported the navigation officer. Enemy dreadnoughts have already destroyed 2 orbital platforms. Civilian evacuations are behind schedule. Ben watched the main screen show 3 massive Void Collective ships that looked like geometric nightmares made of black metal and energy conduits. Each dreadnought was twice the size of Unity's Edge and bristled with weapons that could destroy entire cities. The logical response would be to call for reinforcements and wait for a larger fleet. All ships form up in spiral pattern delta, Ben commanded. Remember, we're not trying to destroy those dreadnoughts. We're trying to confuse them long enough for the civilians to escape. The 12 ships under Ben's command moved into a formation that would have horrified traditional military strategists. Instead of maintaining safe distances and coordinated fire patterns, they arranged themselves in a tight spiral that brought them dangerously close to each other while approaching the enemy from multiple angles. Captain, the enemy is repositioning to counter our approach, Swiftclaw reported. They're adapting faster than our computer models predicted. Good, Ben grinned. That means they're paying attention to us instead of the evacuation ships. All Mantari units execute phase shift assault plan chaos. What happened next looked like magic to anyone who didn't understand Mantari abilities. 50 Mantari warriors simultaneously phase shifted from their positions aboard Ben's fleet and materialized inside the 3 enemy dreadnoughts. But instead of following a coordinated attack plan, each warrior improvised their own mission based on what they found. Some Mantari appeared in engine rooms and began sabotaging power systems. Others materialized on command bridges and started destroying control systems. A few found themselves in weapons bays and began turning the dreadnoughts' own armaments against each other. The Void Collectives' adaptive systems couldn't cope with 50 different sabotage missions, happening simultaneously with no central coordination. Every time the machines tried to counter one threat, they discovered 3 new problems in completely different areas of their ships. Enemy Dreadnought 2 is firing on Enemy Dreadnought 3, Fluxara reported with excitement in her musical voice. The Mentari must have taken control of their targeting systems. Zephyrian units execute energy cascade protocol, Ben ordered. Remember we discussed how to make your shields work? Backwards. Instead of using their energy, manipulation to create defensive barriers, the Zephyrian specialists began projecting offensive energy, fields that interfered with the Void Collective's power distribution. The alien concept of using shields as weapons had never occurred to them before humans suggested it. The battle lasted only 40 minutes, but in that time Ben's small fleet had completely disrupted 3 massive enemy dreadnoughts and allowed over 2 million civilians to escape to safety. More importantly, they had done it using tactics that were completely unpredictable, because they had been invented during the battle itself. Engineer Nicole Adams had been working in the deep space research facilities for the past month, developing hybrid technologies that combined human innovation with alien science. Her laboratory aboard the research station Harmony included scientists from 20 different species, all collaborating on projects that none of them could have imagined alone. The new shield generators are ready for field testing, Nicole announced to her mixed species team. We've combined Zephyrian energy manipulation with human adaptive programming and granite folk structural engineering. The result should be defensive systems that actually get stronger when they're attacked. Dr. Kethen, the Zephyrian science minister, examined the prototype device with fascination. This design violates several fundamental principles of energy physics. According to our models, it should be impossible to create shields that absorb attack energy and convert it to defensive power. According to human models, it should work perfectly, Nicole replied. The difference is that your models are based on what's supposed to be possible. Our models are based on what we need to be possible. This attitude had spread throughout the research facilities. Alien scientists who had spent centuries perfecting existing technologies were learning to think about what didn't exist yet. Human engineers who had always built things out of whatever materials they could find were learning to work with substances that could manipulate space and time. The results were weapons and defenses that neither humans nor aliens could have created separately. Projectile weapons that used Mentari phase shifting to appear inside enemy shields. Communication systems that combined human networking with Zephyrian energy transmission to coordinate fleets across entire galaxies in real time. Propulsion systems that used human engineering principles with alien gravity manipulation to achieve speeds that defied traditional physics. Captain Jake Morrison received regular reports about these developments while he traveled between Council worlds recruiting new species for Galactic Heroes United. What started as a desperate military alliance had become something much larger. It was a cultural revolution that was changing how entire civilizations thought about solving problems. The Crystalline Confederacy has agreed to join the alliance, Jake reported during his weekly communication with Admiral Karen Wright. That brings our total membership to over 1,500 species. More importantly, they're not just providing ships and troops. They're sending their best thinkers to work on collaborative research projects. Any word from the Outer Rim exploration teams? Karen asked. Commander Foster's deep space reconnaissance has identified at least 40 more species that have been fighting the Void Collective alone for decades. Most of them thought they were the only ones left. When they learned about Galactic Heroes United and the success we've been having, many of them immediately asked to join. The most remarkable thing was how quickly alien species adapted to human methods once they overcame their initial fear of taking risks. Beings who had spent millennia following careful procedures discovered they could make rapid decisions and adapt to changing circumstances just as well as humans could, but they brought advantages that humans lacked. Their extended lifespans meant they could plan projects that would take centuries to complete. The Void Collective's central hub stretched across an entire solar system like a mechanical cancer that had consumed planets and stars to build itself into something beyond imagination. General Chris Parker stood on the bridge of the command ship Infinite Hope and studied the reconnaissance data with growing amazement at the scale of what they faced. Intelligence estimates indicate the hub contains the accumulated technology and resources of over 400 destroyed civilizations, reported his chief analyst, Commander Lisa Torres. The central processing core alone is larger than most planets. Our computer models show the assault has a 0.3% probability of success. Chris looked around the bridge at his command staff, which included representatives from nearly 2,000 different species. 6 months ago, most of these beings had never heard of humanity. Now they were preparing to follow human leadership into a battle that every mathematical analysis declared impossible to win. "Has anyone here ever been involved in a mission that had good odds of success?" Chris asked the assembled officers. The response was immediate laughter from dozens of different species. Zephyrian musical chimes mixed with granite folk rumbling and Mantari clicking sounds as the entire command crew expressed amusement at the question. "General Parker," said Fleet Admiral Corthan, a massive crystalline being whose body sparkled when he spoke, "I have been serving under human command for 4 months now. In that time I have participated in 17 missions that our tactical computers declared suicidal. We have succeeded in all 17 missions precisely because we attempted things that logic said were impossible. The enemy has studied our previous tactics and adapted their defenses," added Science Officer Zara Quinn, a floating energy being who could process information faster than any organic mind. "But they have only seen us use coordinated strategies on relatively small scales. They cannot predict what 15,000 ships will do when they all improvise simultaneously." Chris nodded as he reviewed the final battle plans that weren't really plans at all, but rather general guidelines that each fleet commander would adapt based on whatever they encountered. This was the ultimate test of everything humans had taught their alien allies about flexible thinking and creative problem-solving. "All ships signal ready for assault," reported Communications Officer Brett Williams. "Every species in the Alliance has representatives in the attack fleet. This is the most diverse military force in galactic history." The assault began with volunteer squadrons from every member species approaching the hub's outer defenses from seemingly random directions. To outside observers, it looked like complete chaos, with ships attacking individually rather than following coordinated patterns. But each pilot had been trained in human tactical philosophy, which meant they could adapt their missions instantly based on changing conditions. Captain Jake Morrison led one of the first wave attack squadrons in his rebuilt Aurora's Dawn. His crew included his original human officers plus specialists from 12 different alien species who had learned to work together like they were all part of the same military tradition. "Enemy defense grid is activating," reported Lieutenant Sarah Mills from her sensor station. "They're using prediction algorithms to counter our approach vectors." "Perfect," Jake replied. "That means they're trying to think like us instead of thinking like machines. Sarah, transmit random course changes to all ships in our squadron. Make sure no 2 ships follow the same pattern." What followed was exactly the kind of controlled chaos that had become humanity's signature contribution to galactic warfare. Each ship in Jake's squadron changed direction every few seconds based on random number generators rather than tactical necessity. The result looked completely insane, but it made their movements impossible for enemy computers to predict. The Void. Collective's defensive systems had been designed to counter logical military strategies. They could adapt to any coordinated attack plan no matter how complex. But they couldn't adapt to tactics that were deliberately random and constantly changing based on individual initiative rather than central command. "Hull breaches on enemy defense platform 7, reported Dr. Lisa Harper from her science station. "The Mantari phase shift specialists have materialized inside their shield generators. They're sabotaging the systems from within." Jake watched the main tactical display show hundreds of similar small victories, happening simultaneously throughout the battle zone. No single attack was decisive, but together they were overwhelming the enemy's ability to respond effectively. Meanwhile, deep inside the hub itself, Captain Morrison's old friend, Ambassador Veltar, was leading a desperate mission to reach the central processing core. His team included some of the most capable specialists from dozens of species, all working together to accomplish something that pure logic declared impossible. "The core chamber is just ahead," whispered Engineer Susan Cole as they moved through corridors that looked like the inside of a mechanical nightmare. "But there are defense systems between here and there that could destroy our entire team in seconds." "Then we don't give them seconds," replied Commander Amy Foster, who had become expert at leading mixed-species assault teams. "Mantari units phase shift past the defenses. Zephyrians create energy barriers to protect the rest of us. Granite folk use brute force to clear any obstacles we can't go around." The final assault on the processing core required every species to use their natural abilities in ways they had never attempted before. Mentari warriors phase-shifted through solid metal to disable security systems from inside. Zephyrians created energy constructs that could think and act independently. Granite folk discovered they could interface directly with alien technology by using their incredible strength to physically manipulate systems that were never designed for organic interaction. But the most crucial moment came when they finally reached the central processing chamber and discovered that the Void Collective's core intelligence was too complex for any conventional attack to disable. Dr. Lisa Harper, working with Alien Computer, specialists realized that the only way to defeat the system was to give it something it couldn't process effectively. The core intelligence learns by analyzing patterns and predicting outcomes, Lisa explained to the assault team. But human decision-making isn't based on pure logic. We make intuitive leaps that don't follow predictable patterns. How does that help us destroy this thing? Asked Amy Foster. We don't destroy it, Lisa replied with growing excitement. We confuse it. We give it a problem that requires human intuition to solve and then refuse to provide the solution. Working together with alien technicians who had learned to think like humans, Lisa created a logic puzzle that could only be solved through the kind of creative thinking that humans specialized in. The puzzle required making decisions based on incomplete information, combined with intuitive guesses about probable outcomes. When they fed the puzzle into the Void Collective's central processor, the results were immediate and catastrophic. The machine intelligence that had consumed hundreds of civilizations suddenly found itself trapped in a recursive loop, trying to solve a problem that had no logical solution. The core systems are cascading, reported Veltar as alarms began sounding throughout the massive structure. The central intelligence is using all available processing power to analyze the puzzle. It cannot focus on defensive operations or fleet coordination. Outside the hub, the battle had turned completely in favor of Galactic heroes united. Without coordination from their central intelligence, the Void Collective forces were reduced to individual units, following basic programming. The creative, flexible tactics that humans had taught their alien allies proved devastatingly effective against enemies that could only respond with predetermined behaviors. General Chris Parker watched from his command ship as the massive hub began to collapse under its own contradictions. The machine intelligence that had seemed unstoppable was destroying itself, trying to solve a puzzle that required the one thing it lacked, which was the ability to make illogical creative leaps based on intuition and hope. All civilian populations in occupied territories are reporting that Void Collective forces have simply stopped fighting, reported Commander Torres. The machines are shutting down without orders from their central command. The war that had threatened to consume the entire galaxy ended not with a massive explosion, but with the quiet shutdown of machines that could no longer receive instructions from their core intelligence. The Void Collective's greatest strength, which was its perfect logical coordination, had become its ultimate weakness when faced with problems that logic alone couldn't solve. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Assembly once again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Representatives from over 3,000 species filled the chamber, and all of them were talking excitedly about new projects and collaborative ventures that would have been unimaginable before humans arrived. Chief Counselor Thane addressed the assembly with pride in his rumbling voice. Fellow beings, today we formally establish the permanent charter of Galactic Heroes United. This organization will serve as both the military defense force and the exploration service for our expanded galactic community.